At some forgotten point in human history, there was a knowledge so profound, so transformative, that its mere mention would cause silence. The idea that reality was not just something to be endured or transformed by physical means, but something to be shaped by the conscious force of the word, was a secret tightly held by ancient civilizations. And we're not talking about metaphors or parables. The word, in its purest origin, was encoded energy, organized vibration, conscious intention, transformed into sound that spanned dimensions. Everything that exists was, one day, a frequency, and every frequency can be intoned. But over the centuries, humanity traded this divine science for an increasingly dense, mechanical, disconnected vocabulary, a language that became incapable of creating, only capable of repeating. And so, the external world transformed into a mirror of this internal limitation. Ancient peoples understood that sound was not just an acoustic phenomenon, but a bridge between the invisible and the visible. Egyptian priests chanted sacred words in rituals because they knew that what was pronounced in alignment with the cosmic order became reality. It wasn't superstition, it was spiritual engineering. At the beginning of everything, says the Gospel of John, was the Word. Not the common word, but the Logos, the creative vibratory intelligence. This same principle appears in the Vedas, with the primordial Om, and in the African tradition, with the Nyama sound. Cultures separated by oceans and eras spoke of the same truth. The word was, in its essence, the creative instrument of the gods, or rather the divine technology to which every human being had access before the fall into unconsciousness. But what happened to this ability? Why did we lose this creative tool that instantly shaped the surrounding reality? The answer lies in the disconnection between the self and the sound. Over time, we began to use words as habits, not as extensions of consciousness. We started to repeat phrases out of conditioning, not intention. Speech ceased to be a sacred act and became everyday noise. The degradation of language was, in fact, the beginning of imprisonment. They imprisoned us, not with bars, but with a limited vocabulary, an adulterated language, and a dormant spiritual memory. And by forgetting the creative power of the word, we also forgot that we are co-authors of reality. Imagine a time when the sound of your voice realigned atoms. A time when saying heal with complete internal alignment was enough to heal. A time when light was not just a word, but a command. This time is not in the future, it's in the past, asleep in every cell. In every ancestral people there is a version of this memory. The Mayans, for example, used sound in their calendars as a vibrational tool. The Essenes, a mystical group linked to the lineage of Jesus, chanted words in specific tones during their purification practices, knowing that the right intonation with the right emotion altered the very molecular structure of the body and the environment. The word was medicine, it was a portal, it was a sword, it was a shield, it was everything. The Bible was a belated attempt to preserve part of this knowledge. However, being repeatedly translated by political hands, it lost much of its original vibration. The term word in ancient Greek, logos, carries with it not only the notion of speech, but of a living code, a structuring intelligence that sustains entire universes. When Genesis says, "Let there be light," it was not a decorative phrase, it was an activation code. Light came into being not because God thought of light, but because he verbalized light. The difference between thinking and speaking at this level is like the difference between imagining a map and traversing the territory. One belongs to the potential field, the other to the manifested field. Sound is the crossing. However, as empires grew, access to this power became a threat. If every human being could create with words, control would be impossible. Thus, spiritual realms were reduced to dogmas, and the science of verbal vibration was relegated to esoteric mysticism. Religions arose with their faith manuals, but the real key, the knowledge that the mouth is an altar and the word is magic, was silenced. Only fragments remained, whispers preserved by initiates, Kabbalah rabbis, Tibetan monks, Amazonian shamans. The Western world in turn transformed language into a logical tool, separating it from emotion, from the soul, from vibration. And so, creation lost its potency. But there is something that has never disappeared: the internal resonance we feel when hearing certain words, Why do some phrases touch us deeply while others go unnoticed? Because the soul still recognizes the echo of the celestial word. Within us, the same primal sound that gave birth to the universe still pulses. There is still a fragment of the Logos vibrating between the heart and the throat, waiting to be awakened. When we feel a shiver upon hearing the truth, it's the memory of the living word responding. There is no lie that can survive the pure sound. There is no reality that does not bow before a word intoned with truth, faith, and alignment. This divine language was not just about what was said, but about the state of consciousness when saying it. In other words, it's not only the content of speech that shapes realities, but the vibration level of the speaker. For this reason, masters like Jesus spoke little, but when they did, everything changed. He didn't shout, he didn't give speeches, he asserted, and each assertion was a spark of creation. He would say, "Rise up and walk," and healing would occur. Not because the phrase was magical, but because he himself was the frequency of healing when he spoke. The word had instant return because it came from a complete being, aligned, awakened. Reality obeyed. It did not resist. It recognized the voice of the Creator within the creature. Today, we live in the era of empty repetition. We repeat words without feeling. We say, "I'm fine," without being so. We say, "Thank you," without gratitude. We complain automatically, and every word, even unconscious, continues to create. We create scarcity by saying, "I can't." We create illness by saying, "I'm done." We create delay by saying, "It's hard." We don't realize that reality, like a living mirror, is constantly responding to the sound we emit. And this sound comes not only from the mouth, but from the heart, the mind, the unspoken emotion. The divine language is not only verbal, it's vibrational. Every word we carry inside also manifests, even if we don't express it. Perhaps that's why so many spiritual traditions encourage silence, not as an absence of sound, but as a purification of the vibrational field of speech. Silence prepares the ground for the creative word. It cleans the channel, and when one speaks after a profound silence, the word vibrates with clarity, with power, with presence. The universe responds with precision because it recognizes the voice of the source. The problem is not that the divine language has been destroyed. It has been forgotten, abandoned, but not dead. Each of us still carries it, like an old melody that still lives in our bones, waiting to be sung again, waiting to be remembered. Therefore, it's not about seeking a new language or a sacred sound lost in ancient scrolls. It's about remembering, about retrieving the pure sound within yourself, about speaking with intention, about pronouncing with truth, about realizing that every time you say something about yourself or the world, you are shaping the bricks of future reality. And this construction starts now. It starts with each word, with each sentence, with each silence. And if you've made it this far, it's because, perhaps, you're already hearing the call of the sacred verb awakening within you. Prepare yourself. For the return to the power of words is the beginning of a new creation. When we speak, much more than words traverse the air. Each emitted sound carries with it a specific frequency, a unique vibrational signature that interacts with the invisible field of existence. It's in this field that reality begins to take shape. In the beginning was the Word, and this beginning is not just chronological, it's structural. Reality doesn't start with matter. It starts with the vibration that gives rise to matter. Speech is not just a means of communication between people. It is the first step of manifestation, the invisible line that links thought to form. When a word is pronounced with conscious intention, it becomes an energetic seed cast into the fertile soil of the universe. This seed, watered by emotion and persistence, germinates, blossoms, and transforms into events, people, circumstances. Nothing is by chance. Everything is the result of what was vibrated in words, whether spoken or not. The oldest traditions knew that the word does not describe reality, it shapes it. Jesus didn't perform miracles because he was a divine exception, but because he was fully aligned with the creative power of the living word. When he said rise, reality immediately reorganized itself. Hermes Trismegistus, the master of Hermetic wisdom, stated, "As above, so below. As within, so without." But what connects the inside to the outside? The word. Krishna, in the Vedas, spoke of the primal sound as the basis of the entire universe. For the Egyptians, Thoth, the god of wisdom, created entire universes with the correct intonation of sacred words. These were not allegories, they were precise descriptions of the workings of reality, which today are beginning to be confirmed by studies in quantum physics and neuroscience. The word, spoken with faith, love, or fear, acts as an energetic command. But what is the difference between speaking and manifesting? Most people speak, few manifest. And this difference lies in the degree of presence and coherence between mind, heart, and speech. Speaking anything, in any way, without presence, without emotion, without internal alignment, is like trying to light a flame underwater. Manifesting, on the other hand, requires internal silence, clarity of intention, and vibrational awareness. A living verb is a conscious verb. It is a speech born from a state of spiritual integrity, where there is no doubt, no contradiction, no deviation between what is felt, what is thought, and what is pronounced. The universe does not just listen to the sound, it responds to the frequency that the sound carries. And this frequency comes from the emotion, the energy and motion that accompanies speech. The ancient mystery schools trained initiates for years before authorizing them to pronounce certain words. The reason was simple. A sacred word spoken by someone unprepared, without vibrational purity, could have disastrous effects. They did not toy with the verb. It was treated as a portal, as a force of creation or destruction. It was used to heal, to invoke, to transform. That's why the masters spoke little. Each word was measured, weighed, chanted at the right time. Silence was part of the divine language. It was not an absence of sound, but a preparation for the creative verb. In silence, energy organizes itself. In sound, it manifests. This alternation is the cosmic breath of creation. Today, having forgotten this knowledge, we use words as if they were disposable. We hastily say good morning, we say I love you out of habit, we curse without realizing, we complain automatically, and each of these careless words, without intention, without presence, is building a fragmented reality. That's why there's so much internal noise, so much external confusion. We are reaping what we vibrate in the form of inattentive words. But the living word is still available. It has not died. It is only hidden behind layers of noise, waiting for the silence of consciousness to re-emerge. And when it returns, it transforms everything. It does not require effort, only truth. It does not shout, it vibrates. And the universe obeys. Modern science is gradually beginning to rediscover this knowledge. Quantum physics shows us that reality is, at its essence, probabilistic, and that the observer's consciousness influences the behavior of matter. But what is a word if not a form of active observation, an extension of consciousness that commands, directs, organizes? Experiments with particles demonstrate that they collapse into specific states when observed. The word in this context acts as the verbalized intention of the observer. It is the directed collapse of quantum reality. And when this word is in coherence with the heart, it becomes irresistible to the energetic field of the universe. Creation happens not as an exception, but as a consequence. Furthermore, there are studies that show how sound affects the structure of matter. Cymatics, for example, reveals geometric patterns that arise when particles such as sand or water are exposed to different sound frequencies. Harmonious sounds create beautiful and organized shapes. Dissonant sounds generate chaos. If this happens with particles, imagine with the water in your body, with the field around you, with the environment in which you live. Every word you utter, especially with emotion, is silently shaping your physical, mental, spiritual reality. Nothing escapes vibration. Nothing resists the aligned word. The verb is a dormant spiritual technology. It is the source code of reality. Every prayer, every mantra, every spiritual decree is born from this science. The problem is that most people don't know how to use it. They pray without presence, repeat without intention, speak without awareness. And that's why they don't see results. The manifestation does not happen because the verb has become empty. Recovering the power of the word is more than just speaking positively. It's speaking with the whole being. It's pronouncing from the heart in coherence with thought and feeling. It's living what one speaks. It's aligning the verb with inner truth. And the truth is that we are all already creating with words all the time. The difference lies in whether or not we notice this process. When someone says, "My life is a mess," they are declaring a state. They are telling the universe, "Organize my reality according to this vibration." And the universe obeys because it doesn't judge, it just responds. When someone states, "This never works out for me," they are issuing a sentence. And sentences are like self-fulfilling prophecies. It's not magic, it's vibration, it's energy engineering. The word is the code, the emotion is the energy, and the universe is the mirror. Therefore, observing our own vocabulary is a profound spiritual exercise. The words we use every day reveal where our consciousness lies. They expose whether we are vibrating in scarcity or abundance, in fear or trust, in creation or survival. And changing our speech is reprogramming the field. It's not enough to think differently, we need to speak differently. And it's not enough to speak differently, we need to feel differently. When thought, speech, and feeling unite, the word becomes alive. And a living word creates, transforms, heals, liberates. Practice begins in everyday life, in the way you speak to others, but mainly in the way you speak to yourself. The words you repeat internally are the ones that most shape your reality. What you affirm in silence, daily, is creating the invisible structure of your tomorrow. True prayer is internal dialogue. And when this dialogue becomes sacred, everything around changes. Because reality is malleable, and the mold is you. The word lives in you, it never left. It was only silenced by fear, by conditioning, by haste. But now, by remembering this, you begin to speak again with the universe. And the universe, as always, listens. In every letter, there is a world. In every sound, a living frequency. Long before modern language, rational and limited by grammatical rules, there was a pulsating code, a matrix of spiritual communication that united heaven and earth. It was not language as we know it today. It was vibration condensed into living symbols. The so-called Adamic language, often mentioned in sacred and occult texts, is described as the first language, the original matrix of communication between humans and the divine. It was a pure language, free from ambiguity, where every word, every sound, every intonation carried a creative force. It was a language that did not need to be learned intellectually, for it sprouted from the soul, encoded in humanity's very spiritual DNA. This language did not merely represent things, it was the things. When uttering the word life, the speaker was not describing life, he was invoking it. Archaic Hebrew, one of the most studied languages among esoteric scholars, carries evident traces of this original code. In its oldest form, each letter was not just a phonetic unit. It was an energetic entity, an expression of cosmic forces. The Aleph, for example, symbolized the creative breath, the beginning of everything, the invisible force that precedes form. The Bet, which follows, represented the house, the vessel, the temple where creation manifests, and so on. The Hebrew alphabet was not linear, it was multidimensional. Each word, formed by these living letters, was an energy equation. A sacred name, for example, was not just a set of sounds, but a vibrational signature that carried the essence of the being named. To invoke a name with the correct intonation was like activating a specific field of reality. The same applies to Sanskrit, the language of the Vedas and mantras. Often referred to by many as the language of the gods, Sanskrit was not developed, but channeled. Each syllable contains a unique resonance, capable of altering states of consciousness. When a mantra is recited correctly, it not only conveys an idea, it alters the vibrational structure of the practitioner. The correct intonation of Om Mani Padme Hum is not just a prayer, it's an internal realignment, a purification, an attunement with higher aspects of the self. Sanskrit, like Hebrew, reveals that sound is a bridge between consciousness and matter. The word, when spoken in its original form and aligned with the heart, not only communicates, it transforms. Ancient civilizations did not write out of a need for record-keeping, but for ritualistic purposes. Egyptian hieroglyphs, for example, were not merely visual symbols, they were energetic portals. Each symbol carried a specific vibration, and writing them in temples, tombs, and papyri was a way of invoking and anchoring certain frequencies in that environment. Writing was a sacred act as much as speaking. Language was a means of organizing the invisible world on the physical plane. And since sound is merely the audible manifestation of a vibration, each letter, each intonation was carefully chosen to generate a specific energy field. That's why Egyptian, Babylonian, and Mayan priests were so restrictive about the use of sacred words. They were keys, and keys should not be given to those who still live locked within themselves. The disconnection from these original languages happened gradually, but it was accelerated by poorly made translations, political adaptations, and above all, by the loss of spiritual sensitivity. When translating the sacred texts into more modern languages with different structures and less symbolism, much of the original power was lost. The translation from Hebrew and Aramaic into Greek and then into Latin and other Western languages diluted the vibrational essence of the texts. Words that previously had multiple layers of meaning became simplified, linear. The Hebrew term for word, davar, also meant thing. In other words, what was said became. In modern translation, this connection between sound and manifestation disappeared. And along with it, we lost the sense of sacred responsibility over what we speak. In addition to external vibration, these original languages also acted internally, connecting to energy points in the body. There is a profound relationship between specific phonemes and energy centers, such as the chakras. Some sounds, when chanted correctly, stimulate certain endocrine glands, unlock repressed emotions, or activate altered states of consciousness. This wisdom was known to yogis, healers, and mystics of various traditions. Sound was not just a form of communication, it was a tool for healing, expansion, and elevation. The word, spoken with awareness, could regenerate cells, calm the mind, dissolve traumas. It was the purest vibrational medicine that ever existed, and this medicine was within the reach of the mouth. There are records of words that have changed the course of history, of speeches that made crowds move like waves, of affirmations that healed in an instant, and above all, there are accounts of words whispered in ancient rituals that opened portals between worlds, not out of superstition, but because they were codes. Codes accessible only to those who had purified their inner fields enough to speak without distortion. That's why, among the Essenes and Kabbalists, silence preceded the word. Silence was the inner laboratory where sound was gestated. A sacred word was only spoken when the heart was clean enough not to adulterate it with dense emotion. Today we still do the opposite. We speak before we think. In the divine language, one first feels, then thinks, then speaks, and each of these stages must be in complete coherence. The so-called apocryphal Gospels, especially that of Thomas, speak of the living word as something that arises from within and connects with the whole. They reveal that Jesus taught a language that did not depend on letters, but on vibration. A language that was heard in silence and understood in the heart. This explains why his words had such an impact. They came from a place where sound and consciousness were one. This language has not disappeared. It just ceased to be understood by ears that became deaf to the invisible. The true language of the soul still speaks within us, but it only reveals itself when we stop merely repeating and start vibrating. The most surprising thing is that this language has never depended on being spoken aloud. It can be felt, intoned internally, resonated within the body. The celestial verb does not need grammar, it needs presence. It arises when there is truth. And the truth does not fit into fixed words, it overflows. And in overflowing, it transforms into pure sound, without judgment, without disguise, without control. It's the word that is born from the bare heart. And this word, even if spoken only once, changes everything around it. because it carries with it the echo of the original creation. A sound that reverberates not only in the air, but in the subtle fields of existence. A sound that transforms not only what is heard, but what is experienced. Prayer, in this sense, has become ineffective because it has lost its vibration. We pray out of obligation, sing out of vanity, and repeat without soul. And the universe, which responds to vibration and not form, remains silent. The divine language does not respond to perfect grammar. It responds to energetic coherence. And this coherence is only achieved when what is said is an exact reflection of what is felt and believed. Words without presence are like lights without energy. They do not illuminate. The soul recognizes the vibrational lie, even if the sentence is beautiful, and it recognizes the truth, even if it is silent. Therefore, sacred words must be lived before they are spoken. It's time to reclaim this forgotten language, this dormant frequency, not through rational study, but through inner listening. Each one carries within themselves the ability to vibrate words with creative power. But for this, it is necessary to cleanse the verb of all layers of conditioning, fear, judgment, and haste. One must speak from the heart, feel before speaking, listen before responding, be silent before creating. For only then, the word returns to being a verb, and the verb, as in the beginning, returns to being light. Much of what we know about spirituality today was handed down to us by institutions that chose what should be preserved and what should be buried. The official history of spirituality, as taught in organized religious traditions, is only a fraction of what was lived, written, and transmitted by ancient masters. There was a meticulous, strategic selection that decided which texts would be considered sacred and which would be labeled as heresy. This choice was not guided by spiritual purity, but by power. And at the center of this decision was language. Words capable of awakening consciousness were silenced. Sentences that liberated were suppressed. Entire gospels that taught about the living word, about conscious creation, were removed from the canon to preserve a control structure. What remained was an echo, a shell. The essence of the creative language was hidden behind dogmas and incomplete metaphors. Among the rejected texts is the Gospel of Thomas, a collection of teachings attributed to Jesus, but which presents a radically different view from that imposed by the councils. Unlike the canonical Gospels, Thomas does not narrate miracles, does not speak of the final judgment, nor does it establish religious hierarchies. It is a direct invitation to experience the divine within oneself. What is most striking is the emphasis on the inner word. Jesus, in this text, says, "If what you have within you is not brought to the surface, it will destroy you. If it is brought to the surface, it will save you." Here, salvation is not in following external laws, but in listening to one's own divine voice, the word hidden in the silence of the heart. The word that creates reality is not outside, but inside, waiting to be awakened. And this, for the institutions, was unacceptable. A human being who discovers the internal word becomes uncontrollable. The Council of Nicaea, held in the year 325, was a decisive milestone in this exclusion. There, the Roman Empire, under the pretext of unifying the Christian faith, chose which Gospels should make up the New Testament. Out of more than 30 Gospels circulating among the early Christians, only 4 were approved. The rest were destroyed, hidden, or discredited. The Gnostic texts, which spoke of the inner Christ, the language of silence, the vibrational word emanating from the soul, were considered dangerous. They did not require temples, priests, or intermediary rituals. They taught that the body is the temple, that prayer is internal listening, and that the divine word is personal and non-transferable. This spiritual autonomy threatened the empire. Therefore, it was erased. The concept of sin has also been distorted. Originally, in Greek language, sin was hamartia, which meant missing the mark, deviating from one's essence. It was an artillery term, not a moral condemnation, but upon being reinterpreted, it came to mean guilt, punishment, chastisement, and with that, humans were conditioned to fear their own nature. Language was weaponized against the soul. Words that should have healed began to hurt. Terms like salvation, redemption, hell were used as instruments of fear, not liberation, and the more language distanced itself from vibrational truth, the harder it became to access the creative verb. A language of submission was created, of spiritual scarcity, which disconnected us from the living verb and trapped us in alien narratives. The verb, when free, is a field of infinite possibilities. When imprisoned, it becomes a sentence. And that's what established religions have done. They've transformed divine words into structures of power. That's why the true masters always spoke through parables, metaphors, codes, not because they wanted to hide, but because they knew that only those who had ears to hear would understand the vibration behind the letter. The parable is not a children's story, it's a vibrational armor. It protects sacred knowledge from distortion. It hides the truth from those who want to use it as a weapon. It reveals only to those who seek with a clean heart. The creative verb does not surrender to just anyone. It demands presence, intention, purity. It demands alignment with the whole. Behind the exclusion of the Gospels and the manipulation of sacred words, there was an ancient fear, the fear of the awakened human being. A being who knows the power of their word does not submit. They do not depend on spiritual mediators. They consciously create their reality. And this threatens any system that feeds on ignorance. The councils not only hid texts, they hid vibrational keys. Each suppressed phrase was a formula for creation. Each lost gospel was a map back to the sacred word. But the good news is that these maps still exist, hidden between the lines, preserved in hidden traditions, whispered by silent masters. And more than that, they are inscribed within each being, waiting to be read again. Many traditions speak of a time when language will be restored. Not as a single language, but as a unified vibrational consciousness. A time when words will regain their power because beings will speak again with an awakened heart. That time is coming. The collapse of religious institutions, the search for living spirituality, the resurgence of ancestral wisdom, all of this points to the return of the verb. But for this verb to return, silence is required. Silence to listen to one's own soul. Silence to perceive which words are being said daily without awareness. Silence to choose again what one wishes to vibrate. For each word is a seed, and the field is fertile. The language of fear, guilt, and limitation needs to be uninstalled. It no longer serves us. It belongs to an era of forgetfulness. Now it is time to remember. Remember that the verb is alive, that it has never been erased, only buried under layers of noise. And this verb will not be found in temples, nor in sacred books, nor in religious speeches. It will be found in the space between thought and speech, in the subtle interval where the intention is pure and the heart is open. There, at that point of silence, the word is reborn. And when it is reborn, it does not repeat, it creates. It does not convince, it transforms. It does not impose, it liberates. The true gospel is not a book, it's a vibration. It's the sound of being in coherence with the whole. It's the word made flesh, not by theological imposition, but by vibrational alignment. And this word is waiting to be spoken again by those who dare to abandon the old language, the old beliefs, the vocabularies of pain. Speaking with the living word is to take full responsibility for the reality one lives. It's to realize that every phrase spoken, every thought vocalized, every internal sentence is contributing to the construction of the world, and this world will not be new as long as the words are old. Therefore, the return to the unknown gospel is not an archaeological rescue. It's a vibrational awakening. It's looking inward and realizing that the most powerful sound in the universe still resonates within your chest. That the sacred name can still be pronounced, as long as it's not only with the mouth, but with the entire soul. It's time to be silent to listen to understand to speak, and to speak to create. For the word, when alive, is pure creation, and true creation begins within. The reality as we know it is not fixed, solid, or immutable. It is malleable, vibrational, a field of infinite possibilities awaiting collapse into form, time, and direction. This malleability is precisely what modern quantum physics begins to reveal. that everything in the universe exists in a state of superposition until a consciousness interacts with this field and causes it to choose a specific reality. This moment of choice, the so-called wave function collapse, is the bridge between the invisible and the visible, between the potential and the concrete. And what represents this collapse in human daily life? The word. Because the word, when charged with conscious intention, emotion, and vibrational clarity, acts like a laser beam that cuts through the quantum field and determines a specific reality. The universe listens to what you vibrate through speech. It does not respond to empty words, but to the vibrational field that underpins them. But for this to happen, the word needs to be more than just a sound. It needs to be a frequency coherent with the desired field. Most people speak out of fear, doubt, uncertainty. They ask for peace while vibrating anxiety. Speak of prosperity while vibrating scarcity. Ask for love while vibrating rejection. And the field responds to the frequency, not to the request. This is the quantum nature of reality. It is impartial, obedient, and sensitive. The universe does not distinguish between an affirmation made as a joke or as a decree. It merely responds to what is emitted with vibrational consistency. This means that every word spoken with intense feeling is an act of creation. Every sentence repeated with emotion is a seed thrown into the quantum field, and this field, in turn, is the cosmic womb where everything manifests. Masaru Emoto's work with water powerfully illustrates this truth. By exposing water molecules to different words and intentions, Emoto showed that the structures formed by the frozen crystals changed dramatically. Words like love, peace, and gratitude generated harmonic, beautiful, symmetrical shapes. On the other hand, words like hate, fear, and anger generated chaotic, unstructured patterns. And since we are mostly composed of water, this experiment is more than symbolic. It's a portrayal of the direct influence of words on matter. If words can shape crystals, they can also shape cells, thoughts, emotional states, and inevitably, events. When we speak, we create fields. Each word generates a small wave that interacts with other waves around us. When this wave is in coherence with our electromagnetic field, primarily generated by the heart, it expands with more force, more reach, more precision. Heart coherence, a state of balance between the heart, brain, and breathing, amplifies the power of the word. In coherence, words vibrate with more integrity. They don't just come out of the mouth, they emanate from the being. And in this state, reality responds more quickly. It's as if the quantum field says, "I recognize your vibration. Here is the reflection." At the deepest levels, human DNA also responds to the frequency of the word. Epigenetic studies show that the environment, emotion, and vibration affect genetic expression. This means that we are not hostages to our biology. We are co-creators of it. And the word is one of the most direct tools for this command. Conscious verbal affirmations have the power to activate or silence genes, to change cellular functioning, to alter brain chemistry. The verb is a code, and the body is a system that listens, responds, and transforms according to the commands received. And not just the body, but the entire environment around us. The word shapes the space. It permeates objects, environments, relationships. When you enter a place where words of anger have been spoken, you feel it. The field is charged. When someone speaks with love, you notice. The field opens up. Because the verb is not just sound, it's a frequency that propagates, vibrates, and lingers. It's a transmitter of intention. And that's why speaking is a magical act, even when it's not recognized as such. It's an everyday energetic ritual, often unconscious, but always active. And magic happens all the time, whether it's creating chaos or harmony. Blessings and curses, in the ancestral tradition, were not religious metaphors. They were recognized as real effects of the spoken word on the energy field. A blessing was not just a wish, it was a sending of positive frequency with pure intent. And a curse was the same thing in opposite polarity. Today we continue to curse, ourselves and others, through the unconscious repetition of phrases like, "This never works out," "I'm a failure," "I have no luck." Each of these phrases is a command, a verbal spell, a declaration to the universe that, when repeated, gains density and form. And it is in this cycle that we create our limited reality without realizing that we are the sorcerers of our own prison. Rupert Sheldrake, with his theory of morphogenetic fields, offers another layer of this understanding. According to him, behaviors, thoughts, and vibrational patterns create informational fields that replicate and strengthen as they are repeated. The word being vibration directly contributes to these fields. When speaking with intention, you not only change your individual reality, you influence the collective field. You alter the vibrational matrix of the planet. And that's why spiritual masters talk about prayer networks, collective mantras, global chants. Each sacred sound pronounced with purity strengthens a new field, and each unconscious complaint reinforces the old one. The choice is daily, to speak or to be silent, to resonate or to repeat, to create or to react. Most people live on autopilot, reacting with words they've inherited, words they've learned from their parents, society, pain. But awakened consciousness demands vigilance. It demands that each word be chosen as if it were a seed, because it is. And this seed, once sown, germinates, and what grows from it depends on the vibrational quality of what was said. It's no use wanting a new reality with old words. It's no use decreeing abundance while vibrating scarcity. It's no use asking for love while vibrating rejection. The universe doesn't listen to wishes, it listens to vibrations, and the word is the vibration in its most direct form. In silence, we create space, and in this space, the word can emerge with greater force. Conscious silence is not emptiness, it is pure potential. It is the place where the word has not yet been corrupted. It is there that the words that truly create are born. Therefore, the deepest spiritual practice is not just to meditate, but to quieten to hear one's own inner vibration, and then to speak from that silence, not as one who repeats, but as one who emanates. The word that is born from creative silence has the power to instantly transform, because it is not just sound, it is condensed presence. And where there is true presence, reality bends. Therefore, the verb is the most sophisticated instrument of creation ever given to human beings. It is the access code to the quantum field. It is the bridge between the invisible and the visible. But it only works with vibrational integrity. It only responds when the being is aligned, when there is truth, coherence, and presence, when one speaks from the heart and not from programming, when one decrees with faith and not with fear. The verb creates, always. The question is, what are you creating at this very moment with the words you choose, or with those you repeat without realizing? From the most ancient times, there were those who not only understood the sacred power of language, but protected it with reverence and secrecy. They were the guardians of the celestial word, beings, human or otherwise, who carried the mission to preserve the vibrational integrity of the word, protecting it from corruption, egotistic use, and collective forgetfulness. They were not many. They were not in a position of worldly power, but in direct connection with the divine plan. Their language was not just a system of sounds, but an advanced spiritual science that understood that each syllable carried a direct impact on the vibrational mesh of reality. Therefore, the word, for these beings, was not a common expression tool, but a cosmic technology. And the first lesson they taught to those who dared to approach this knowledge was simple and direct: be silent before you learn to speak. These guardians existed in various cultures and times. Among the Egyptians, the priests of Thoth were masters of vibrational speech, knowledgeable of the sacred sounds that healed, invoked, and transformed. They not only mastered the verb, but knew how to encode it in hieroglyphs, sealing their energy in symbols that still echo power today. These priests fasted, meditated, purified themselves before uttering sacred words. The sound could not be emitted by impure mouths. For this reason, silence was an integral part of the process. Language was not taught as it is today in schools, but transmitted by initiation, as it could only be given to hearts already attuned to the responsibility of verbal creation. To speak was to create. To create was to commit to the vibration of what was generated. In the Himalayas, the Tibetan lamas carried secret mantras, syllables that would never be pronounced outside of the temple or the sacred moment. Not out of superstition, but because they knew that words activate fields, and certain fields, once activated by those who are not vibrationally prepared, can destabilize not only the individual, but the surroundings. The word was treated with the same respect as fire, capable of warming or destroying depending on the hand that guides it. The monks knew that the repetition of specific sounds realigned energy centers, unlocked ancestral traumas, activated dormant glands, and reprogrammed mental patterns. Each word was a wave, each mantra, a bridge to expanded states of consciousness, and only those who spent years in silence, discipline, and surrender had access to these sounds. In the Jewish tradition, the Kabbalists delved deeply into the vibrational structure of Hebrew, understanding that the letters are not just symbols, they are channels of power. They studied gematria, a science that reveals the numerical codes behind each word, demonstrating how certain sacred names are not just invocations, but equations that align the self with the whole. One of the greatest secrets of Kabbalah lies in the ineffable name, the sacred tetragrammaton formed by the letters Yod-He Vav-He, the sequence considered the original vibration of creation. The purest Kabbalists did not pronounce this name out loud, as they understood that it should not be spoken, but lived. The sound of these letters, chanted in a state of purity, not only connects with the divine, it transforms both the speaker and the listener into bearers of the source itself. Indigenous shamans from the Americas are also guardians of this sacred language. In their chants, intonations, and power languages, there is an ancestral wisdom that understands that sound is spirit, that word is arrow, that song is medicine. When a shaman sings to heal, he is not merely offering comfort, he is reorganizing the frequencies of the patient's field, calling back the soul that was fragmented by trauma, dissolving stagnant vibrational memories with the power of his voice. His words come from another place, from an inner space where consciousness merges with nature. And for this reason, the shaman's speech is alive, shaped by the presence of the elements, by the spirits of the plants, by the dance of the ancestors. His language is not learned from books. It is received from the earth and the sky. These guardians knew that the divine language is not taught, it is awakened. It cannot be encoded only in books, as its essence is vibrational, and can only be captured by those who have silenced their inner noise. Therefore, every true guardian of the word first had to undergo the death of the ego by completely surrendering the need to be right, to impress, to control. The word, when sacred, does not tolerate distortion. It demands purity, and this purity is not moral. It is vibrational. The being must become a clean channel, a mirror without mists, a full void, capable of letting the word flow without adulteration. Therefore, speaking the divine language is less about learning than it is about remembering, less about memorizing than about releasing, less about mastering than about becoming. With the advancement of materialism, haste, and mental noise, these guardians have been marginalized, discredited, forgotten. Their practices were labeled as superstition, their silence as ignorance, their reverence as backwardness. But as the world sped up in empty words, they continued to chant the verb in due time, unhurriedly, quietly, but with the firmness of those who know that the right sound, at the right moment, can reshape the destiny of a planet. And now, as humanity awakens from its spiritual slumber, many of these wisdoms are returning. Not as esoteric trend, but as a need for reconnection. Because the modern word no longer sustains the soul, it is necessary to return to the sound that heals, to the verb that liberates, to the frequency that reminds us of who we are. But this return requires humility. It requires emptying oneself of certainties, recognizing that the language we use every day is saturated with fear, scarcity, judgment, and that a vibrational re-education is needed to be able to access again the word that creates without hurting, that affirms without imposing, that transforms without dominating. Becoming a guardian of the divine word is committing to silence before speech, to listening before responding, to presence before expression. It's about abandoning automatic language and choosing each word as if it were a sacred gesture, because it is. Sacred geometry, often associated with temple architecture and the organization of matter, is actually an expression of vibrational language. Each sacred sound forms specific geometric patterns. Each true word emits a precise energetic form, and the guardians knew this. Therefore, they chanted words with precise breath, conscious rhythm, pure intention. They did not just speak, they chanted. Like musicians of a cosmic symphony, they knew that the correct sound harmonizes, aligns, heals, and that the corrupted sound disintegrates, fragments, sickens. The divine language, in the end, is music. It is vibration in motion. It is the dance of being with the universe through sound. In more recent times, accounts of experiences with the language of light, sound codes channeled by spiritual beings, have begun to emerge in various parts of the world. These languages do not follow known grammatical structures, but they activate memories, unlock energy centers, and awaken the remembrance of the original word. Often these words are not understood with the mind, but recognized with the heart. They are vibrations that speak to the soul, that touch inner places to which the common language no longer reaches. They are fragments of the sacred language returning to the surface of collective consciousness. Every human being carries within themselves the possibility of becoming a guardian of this language. It is not a privilege of a few, but a mission for many. And for this, it is not necessary to become erudite in ancient languages, but to awaken to the vibrational responsibility of each word spoken. It is to realize that speaking is a creative act, that listening is an act of devotion, that silence is preparing the field, and that honoring the word is recognizing that every sound that comes from your mouth is a brick in the invisible building of reality. Becoming a guardian is living with this awareness in every sentence, in every intention, in every breath. Spiritual ascension is not a mystical leap into a distant ethereal reality. It's an internal reconfiguration, a gradual elevation of a being's vibrational frequency until it becomes aware of its divine origin once again. And in this process of elevation, language plays an absolutely essential role. The language we use, both externally and internally, functions as the vibrational fuel that feeds the energetic structure of the body, mind, and spirit. Every word that is spoken or thought activates a specific resonance. These resonances are not just energetic metaphors, but measurable realities in the subtle field of the being. When one commits to the process of ascension, language becomes a tool for alignment, a frequency thermometer, and at the same time, a sonic ladder towards the remembrance of oneself as a multidimensional being. The body of light, known as Merkaba in Jewish esoteric traditions, is activated not by intellect, but by vibration, and sound plays a crucial role in this activation. The Merkaba is a geometric and energetic structure that interconnects the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual bodies. Its full operation depends on the vibrational coherence of the being, and the word is one of the most direct ways to emit this coherence. When one speaks from presence, from elevated intention, and from love, the sound waves pass through the subtle layers of the energy field and reorder its structure. For this reason, in ancient initiatory schools, such as those of Atlantis, Egypt, or lost civilizations like Lemuria, sound was taught as a key to ascension. Certain words, intoned with the correct frequency, would instantly elevate the disciples' vibrational state, aligning them with subtler planes of reality. Language, in this context, is not limited to everyday speech. It is an extension of consciousness, a sonic current that flows from the soul level to the mental and physical planes. When language is misaligned with the essence of being, it creates noise, dissonance, heaviness. When it is in harmony with inner truth, it creates lightness, expansion, and elevation. Spiritual ascension requires this kind of alignment, a radical commitment to vibrational truth. And this is only possible when speech becomes a reflection of awakened consciousness. Aligned speech does not judge, does not separate, does not diminish. It unifies, it heals, it summons, it reveals. It is not the language that tries to convince, it is the one that awakens what is already dormant in the listener. Therefore, words with high vibrational charges have the power to activate dormant memory codes in other souls. Many accounts of profound spiritual experiences involve sounds, words, or unknown languages that spontaneously arise during meditations, healings, states of ecstasy, or even near-death experiences. These are the so-called languages of the soul, forms of non-rational communication that transcend the boundaries of grammatical logic. They emerge from the core of the being, from the purest and unconditioned part of the spirit, and come as sound waves that reorganize the practitioner's field. These languages do not need to be understood by the mind. They are recognized by the heart. The mind may not understand, but the body vibrates, responds, awakens. And this response is direct evidence that the true spiritual language is not in the intellectual content, but in the frequency it carries. In many cases, these sounds are accompanied by spontaneous activations in the higher chakras, especially in the throat center, responsible for the expression of the self, and in the crown center, which connects to divine consciousness. When these centers are activated together, the language that emerges is not thought, but channeled. It is the word in its pure form, alive, present, luminous. The individual becomes merely a channel, a bridge between dimensions. And this state often represents the threshold between the ordinary being and the awakened being. Language is what crosses this portal. And in crossing it, the individual becomes not just a listener, but a transmitter of the creative word. The ascent is also a process of purifying the inner language. Those internal voices that criticize, judge, sabotage, and nourish dense patterns need to be dissolved. This is not done by force, but with presence. The first step is to observe the internal dialogue with neutrality, to listen to oneself, to recognize that many of the words that are repeated in the mind are not your own. They were inherited, learned, implanted. They are ancestral, social, familial voices. The true ascent begins when the being decides to break away from this vibrational inheritance and consciously chooses which words to keep within themselves. This is internal sound alchemy. It is transforming the lead of the automatic verb into the gold of the sacred verb. Changing the vocabulary is changing the vibration, and changing the vibration is changing the destiny. Positive affirmations are not cliches. They are commands of light in the mental field. But they need to be spoken with truth. Without connection to the feeling, words become hollow shells. Therefore, the path of ascension requires practice. To chant, repeat, listen, silence. Words like, I am light, I am peace, I am presence, should not just be repeated, they should be embodied. Each time they are spoken with true intention, their frequency embeds more deeply into the field, and the longer they stay there, the more they alter reality. Language is the bridge between the being that we are and the being that we can be. There are countless testimonies of people who, by changing their way of speaking, have radically transformed their lives, not only in relationships or in the environment, but at their very level of consciousness. Language acts as a vibrational elevator. Dense words, constantly repeated, keep the individual on the lower floors of frequency. Elevated words, spoken with faith and clarity, transport to higher floors. It's literal. And what is found on these upper floors are not winged angels or flashing lights. They are states of lighter, clearer, more open consciousness. States where fear does not reign, where love circulates freely, and where reality begins to organize in a more fluid way. This is ascension, accessing subtler layers of reality through sustained vibrational elevation. And language is the conducting thread of this ascent. Inner speech shapes the emotional structure. Emotions are energetic responses to thoughts and words. The way we address ourselves determines how we feel, and how we feel determines what we create. If the inner language is aggressive, the emotion will be heavy, and the creation will be distorted. If the language is compassionate, the emotion will be expansive, and the creation will be harmonious. Everything starts with the verb, and for this reason, every true spiritual process includes the re-education of language. Words are tools. They are mirrors, they are bridges, they are guides. They can lead to prison or freedom, to shadow or light, to sleep or awakening. Speak to yourself as a master speaks to their disciple. This is the exercise. Listen to yourself with the same reverence as one listens to a sacred teaching. This is the practice. Each time the verb is used consciously, an invisible step is climbed. Spiritual ascension does not require escape from reality, but a change in how one relates to it. And language is this form. The external world is merely the echoing reflection of what was spoken in the silence of the soul. The verb is the builder of the ladder, and the ladder is built word by word. Language, when purified, becomes a living prayer. It becomes a spontaneous mantra. It becomes a word that illuminates the path. It doesn't need to be complex, sophisticated, or ornate. It just needs to be true. It just needs to be born from the soul. It just needs to resonate with the heart. And when this happens, there is no darkness that can resist, no prison that can hold, no limitation that can stand. The word spoken in coherence with the self is a ray that pierces the veils of illusion. And in this breakthrough, the light of consciousness is made. And where there is light, there is ascension. For centuries, humanity has lived conditioned to a language shaped by scarcity, fear, and the idea that life was a constant struggle for survival. This verbal conditioning is not just a reflection of scarcity, but its root. The way we talk about money, value, worthiness, and prosperity directly shapes the frequency we emit, and consequently, the results we attract. Words are vibrational tools of creation. When we speak in terms of lack, struggle, difficulty, we are informing the quantum field that this is the reality we choose to reinforce, and the field always responds with precision. The transition from survival to abundance does not start with money in the account or outward success. It begins with the reconfiguration of language, with the conscious choice of which words to use to name one's own experience. Most people are prisoners of an inherited vocabulary. From an early age, they hear phrases like, "Money doesn't grow on trees," "You have to sweat to win," "Those born poor die poor," and they internalize these statements as immutable laws of existence. Repeated throughout life, these words become deep beliefs, operating silently in the subconscious and shaping financial reality in a limiting way. The language of scarcity is not just made up of negative words, but of mental patterns crystallized into phrases that limit, sabotage, and fragment the possibility of expansion. And no matter how much prosperity is desired, as long as speech is contaminated by this restrictive vocabulary, the energy of abundance cannot establish itself continuously. Abundance is, above all, a frequency, and language is the channel that transmits or blocks this frequency. To transform this reality, it is first necessary to identify the words that imprison. Words like, "I can't," "I'm unable," "This is too much for me," "It never works out," "I'm unlucky," "I never have luck," are low, dense frequencies that reinforce the vibration of limitation. Each time they are uttered, they reaffirm an identity of helplessness in the face of life. And as the quantum field responds to vibration, the external experience molds to this verbal identity. The process of change requires conscious vigilance. It is necessary to listen to oneself carefully. Observe which phrases repeat automatically, which expressions sabotage expansion, and once identified, replace them with words that vibrate in tune with the new desired reality. This is not a superficial task. It's a deep, vibrational reprogramming. Phrases such as, "I allow abundance to flow into my life," "I am worthy of living in fullness," "I am open to receiving the best of life," carry a completely different energetic charge. But it's not enough to just repeat them mechanically. They need to be said with intention, with presence, with genuine feeling. Emotion is the engine that drives the word into the field. Without emotion, the word has no power. It gets lost in mental noise. With emotion, it becomes a vibrational decree, an energetic command that alters the invisible fabric of reality. Therefore, working with the language of abundance requires the involvement of the whole being, mind, heart, body, and energy. Every cell needs to hear the new word and recognize it as truth. The ancients knew this. Prosperity rituals included chants, prayers, affirmations sung in groups, in rhythm, in unison, because the collective sound amplifies the frequency. Each voice becomes a drum that reverberates in the field. This practice exists even today in various cultures. African chants, Vedic mantras, Sufi prayers, psalms sung in ancient Hebrew, all use the word as an activator of states of abundance and connection with the source. Prosperity for these people was not just material, it was spiritual. It was the harmony between the being and the flow of life, and the word was the instrument to maintain this harmony. When spoken with gratitude, with praise, with reverence, abundance flowed. When spoken with fear, with distrust, with envy, the flow was interrupted. Today, it is possible to apply this wisdom in a practical way. Create daily verbal rituals. Upon waking, instead of starting the day with phrases like, "Another day of struggle," replace it with, "Today is a day of expansion." When facing challenges, instead of saying, "This is impossible," affirm, "I am learning to overcome." When dealing with money, swap, "I don't have enough," for, "I am making room for more flow." These small changes, when made with consistency and emotion, begin to reconfigure the personal vibrational field. And when the field changes, reality follows. Life starts to respond differently. The unexpected happens. The flow is reestablished. And abundance, which previously seemed distant, begins to manifest in unexpected ways. Speech also directly influences the way others perceive us and connect with us. The language of abundance attracts people, opportunities, and circumstances that vibrate on the same wavelength. Conversely, the language of scarcity repels, closes doors, and pushes connections away. The energy of speech is felt even before the content is understood. A simple, "Good morning" said with presence and enthusiasm can open paths. "I can't" said with discouragement can close possibilities. The vibration precedes the meaning. And for this reason, changing the vocabulary is a direct way to change the attraction field. The world responds not to what is said, but to the frequency of who says it. Abundance is silent. It does not shout. It does not beg. It does not demand. It asserts firmly. It declares with certainty. And for that reason, the language of abundance is serene, clear, direct. It doesn't need to justify itself. It doesn't need to defend itself. When one says, "I deserve to prosper," with an aligned heart, the field opens. When one says, "The universe supports me," and it resonates as truth, the paths organize themselves. It's not a matter of luck. It's vibrational science. It's coherence between word, emotion, and intention. And this coherence can be cultivated by anyone, anywhere, at any time. It's just a matter of consciously choosing what one wants to create and speaking from that choice. Affirmations are more than positive statements. They are tools for realignment. Each time you affirm something new, a new neural pathway forms in the brain. Neuroscience has already proven that the brain does not distinguish between reality and imagination. If an affirmation is repeated with enough emotion, the body believes it is real. And when the body believes, the quantum field responds. The verb transforms thought into matter, the body adjusts, the mind opens, and reality reorganizes itself. This is how abundance is created from the word, not by magic, but by frequency, not by force, but by truth, not by struggle, but by alignment. Silence is also an essential part of this process. Abundance is not born from noise, but from space. And silence is the womb of the conscious word. It is in silence that the right word is heard. It is in silence that the creative speech is chosen. It is in silence that one perceives which words sustain the old and which open doors for the new. The speech of abundance is born from the silence of deep listening, from the connection with the source, from the remembrance that everything already is, everything already exists, everything can already be. Scarcity speaks loudly because it fears. Abundance speaks softly because it trusts. And when one trusts, each word becomes an act of creation. The spirituality of abundance is, therefore, the art of speaking with the universe from the inner certainty that one is one with it, that there is no separation, that there is no lack, that life is a continuous flow of giving and receiving, and the word is the bridge between the two. When one gives a true word to the world returns it in the form of blessings. When one affirms their own dignity, reality responds with recognition. When one decrees openness, abundance arrives, always, because the word does not fail. What fails is the alignment. And when this is restored, The word begins to create as in the beginning, with power, with grace, with immediacy. We have reached the point where the cycle closes only to immediately restart, where silence meets the primal sound, and the awakened consciousness returns to the source of the sacred word. The return to the word is not an external event, but an internal, intimate, profound phenomenon that occurs the moment the being bids farewell to dormant language and welcomes in their heart the vibration of the original creation. The sacred word does not belong to any specific religion, tradition, or language. It precedes time. It pulses in the silence before the first sound, in the space before form, in the consciousness before thought. It is the thread that weaves the universe, the matrix of existence, the creative vibration that manifests when there is purity, presence, and totality. The sacred word is the living reminder that everything that was created was so by sound, and everything that can be recreated will be through conscious resonance. This return does not require effort, it demands surrender. It's not about mastering a secret technique, but about abandoning everything that has been built on separation. It is necessary to strip oneself of the words that hurt, the concepts that imprison, the vocabularies that sustain duality, and to deeply silence until the living word re-emerges, not from the mouth, but from the core of the being. In this place, the word does not need to be spoken to be heard. It vibrates in every cell, reverberates in every atom, and its presence reorders the entire existence. It is at this point that language becomes prayer, not as a plea, but as an affirmation of the union between the creator and the creature. The being no longer talks about God, it speaks as God, because it recognizes itself as a direct expression of the source. The new gospel will not be written on paper, nor will it be transmitted by institutions. It will be chanted in the vibration of every awakened being who dares to live the truth they carry. Each word spoken with awareness will be a verse. Each silence filled with presence will be a page. Each action aligned with love will be a chapter. The sacred word will no longer be something distant, hidden, mystical. It will be commonplace. It will be in the way one speaks to a stranger, in the tone used to bless a child, in the vibration contained in a sentence of gratitude. It will be the living Bible, written in speech, in gestures, in intention, because the real temple will be the body, and the altar, the word. The word will not only create external realities, it will create internal worlds where the being will be free, whole, one. The new era that is dawning is not technological, it's vibrational, and the new being that emerges from it will no longer be identified by their nationality, race, or culture, but by the frequency of their word. There will be a silent recognition among those who speak from the awakened heart. They won't need to convince, prove, or impose. Their presence will be the language. Their vibration will be the verb. And those who listen with the soul will recognize, this sound is ancient. It was with me before time. In this new cycle, each being will be a creative spark, and words will be used with the same reverence with which the sacred is touched. There will no longer be room for empty verbs, manipulative speeches, mechanical vocabularies. The verb will be returned to its throne, and speech will once again be an act of divine creation. But for that, it is necessary to make peace with the verb itself, to forgive oneself for the words that hurt, for the sentences that limited, for the decrees of fear and scarcity unconsciously issued. The past cannot be rewritten, but the present can be reinterpreted. And each time a new, aligned, vibrant word is chosen, the past is redeemed, because the timeline bends before the superior vibration. The return to the sacred verb is also a healing process, healing from painful memories associated with speech, voice, the right to express oneself. Many carry ancient ancestral traumas related to the use of words. They were silenced, humiliated, punished for speaking their truth. And these silent records still operate, sabotaging the full manifestation. The sacred verb can only return when these wounds are brought to light and enveloped with compassion. Listening then becomes as important as speaking. The verb is not just what is said, it is also what is heard. Deep, silent, receptive listening allows one to hear the hidden verb behind the world's noises. And this listening needs to start within. It is necessary to stop, breathe, and listen to what the soul is trying to say. There is a silent language, prior to thought, that only reveals itself in the space between one thought and another. There lies the verb. There, without words, without images, without judgments, the voice of the source vibrates. And when this voice is heard, there is no more confusion. The words that come out of the mouth after this are crystal clear, sharply soft, powerfully calm. They do not just communicate, they transform. This return also requires vigilance. The world still resonates in the language of separation, fear, conflict. It's easy to be dragged back into the vocabulary of the old reality. Therefore, every spoken word needs to be preceded by presence. Before speaking, ask, does this create or destroy? Does this unite or separate? Does this uplift or dull? This simple practice is a silent revolution. It's the beginning of the language of light, of conscious communication, of the word that builds. And when millions start to speak this way, the global reality will inevitably change, because matter is shaped by fields of information, and words are the packages that carry this information. The new earth will not be built with machines. It will be intoned phrase by phrase until its vibration becomes undeniable. On this path, it will also be necessary to learn to respect the silence of others. Not everyone is ready to hear the sacred word. Many still need the noise to feel alive. And that's okay. The word doesn't need to convince. It is patient. It knows that the seed sown at the right frequency will germinate when the soil is fertile. Therefore, the awakened being doesn't argue. It emanates. It doesn't compete. It vibrates. It doesn't impose. It invites. The language of the new age is inclusive, compassionate, free. It doesn't serve egos. It serves the truth that pulses beyond forms. And the purer this language becomes, the more it becomes silent, until the word is heard, even without being pronounced. This is the end point and the starting point. The verb that returns is not new, it is eternal. But it needs a new space within each being, a space that is unobstructed, unconditioned, liberated from the dead words of the old reality. The world already has too many discourses. What is missing are voices that echo truth. And truth is not opinion. It is coherent vibration between what one is, what one feels, and what one expresses. The sacred verb is pure coherence. When this state is achieved, reality responds like a polished mirror. Time obeys, doors open, the invisible reveals itself. And the being realizes that it is not just part of creation, it is creation in motion. The creation never ended. Genesis was only the first note of an eternal symphony. Every word spoken with awareness is a new note. Each full silence is a pause that prepares the next chord. The universe is still being written, spoken, intoned, and every human being has a role in this work. No one is left out. Nobody is too small. Each sentence, each verbalized intention, each emitted vibration is a brick in the construction of the world to come. The sacred word is the divine pen, and the mouth is the altar where it manifests. Speaking has become a ritual, listening a sacrament, and living a continuous act of conscious creation. Now the call is clear. Silence the old to hear the new. Let the language of pain die to be reborn in the speech of love. Give up soulless words and embrace the living verb. It's not an easy path, but it's the only one that leads back home. For in the beginning was the Word, and in the end too. And in this return to the sacred verb, the cycle is completed, not as an end, but as a new beginning where each word spoken from the heart is the rebirth of creation. Now, finally, conscious. Mind unfettered, now tell me with your sacred words, which phrase has been resonating most strongly within you lately? Leave in the comments what you feel you are creating with your speech. Perhaps by sharing, you activate something in someone who is also walking with you. After all, manifesting together is allowing the verb to expand and network. And if you felt the call of this living verb, don't leave without watching the next video that is on your screen right now. The Book of 33 Steps, the Hidden Map, Jesus Left for Enlightenment. In it, we will dive into the hidden codes left by Jesus, an unrevealed roadmap, step by step, to access the light that already dwells within you. Click now and continue on your path to ascension. The journey doesn't end here. It has merely quieted down for the next V.